Hey everyone, before we get into the week, I've got some big news. Ingrid and I will be parting ways as co hosts on the podcast. We'll have a few more episodes together to ease the transition. Once Ingrid leaves the podcast, I'll be welcoming a new co host, my partner, Gabriella, who many of you have heard me mention on here. So, the new focus of the podcast will remain rooted in astrology, but will also include some psychological perspectives on the planetary transits. I know this is a big change for all of us, and I want to acknowledge you, Ingrid, and your role in building the weekly transit as a brand, as a whole, and as a dedicated co host and editor. I am incredibly grateful to you, Ingrid, for your support over the years, and I look forward to watching us both grow in new directions.
Yeah, this is some big changes. Thank you, Scott, for spending the last 3.5 years with me. And I thought maybe we could share a little bit about some of the transitions we're both going through. Hopefully the audio today is okay. I'm out in Orange County visiting my family. I don't have my normal microphone and stuff, so Scott was a little concerned. I don't think he can hear me as well. So hopefully you guys can hear me. Yeah, there's going to be an ending coming up. I think 3 more episodes with me and Scott here together. And I just want to thank everyone for spending so much time with us. And I'm really excited for what is next on the podcast. Gabriella is amazing. I know her personally. They make a very good duo. So I'm sure there will be lots of good insights coming from them both. And if you want to follow what I'm doing next, I have some ideas in mind. You can follow me on Instagram at Ingaroo, Ingaroo. I would love to, keep in touch with everybody that I've met here. I've gotten so much support from Scott personally, and then so many of the listeners. So I want to thank you all for sending me sweet messages and encouragement and hanging out for my journey and just being supportive, internet friends out there in the world. It's been an amazing journey, but I'll be here for a couple more with Scott here. But please come visit me, and I think maybe I'll come along on Scott's new venture here whenever I get settled for a
Yes.
little guest spot,
Yeah, for
a little
sure.
a little Scott check-in, a little weekly transit check-in.
Yes, I know. I'm looking forward to having guests on the show moving forward, maybe even doing more than one episode a week, where you have an episode where we're talking about the planets and answering questions, and then another one with guests and that sort of stuff. So we'll see what happens,
Yeah.
but I'm excited to follow you, Ingrid, and see what you're going to be doing next. I just think about how far you and I have both come over the last 3.5 years. Like, 3.5 years ago, you didn't even want to hear your voice on the
No.
podcast. And now you're confident enough to not only have your voice, but your face in front of a camera. And and just thinking of you doing your own podcast, and if you do that with someone else or whatever you plan to do, I think it's going to be amazing, because you've really learned how to let your personality shine
Hmm.
while the camera's rolling and and you're being recorded. Because I know it can be like super nerve-wracking at first. You're like, oh my god, that's how I look, that's how I sound, like I'm so
I mean,
weird, like
art the art of being present, I think, was the lesson. Instead of thinking in the future, like, what is everyone going to think about me, or how am I sounding, or
Mhm.
integrating those whatever personal growth things that I want to change about myself into the present moment, and kind of being okay with stumbling and everything not being perfect. And I think that, you were very big reason I was able to even push through it, because I was like, oh my God, I have to show up for Scott because I already agreed to this. I can't just like back out now. I guess I'm gonna look like a fucking idiot. But through looking stupid, quote unquote, uh, I've grown a lot from that. I was able to be okay with feeling and looking a way that I was not particularly comfortable with. And I mean, I've been talking about it recently with the dance thing. Now that there's a new thing, it comes up again, and it's like learning to be in the discomfort so you can actually grow is horrifying, but in the end, it is definitely worth it. I feel like looking back, I can't even, I mean, I did feel a little bit of that in this, new dance venture of that severe discomfort, but I don't think anything will compare to the beginning of this. So just remembering that, like, in the end, there's something to really be proud of
Exactly.
through all of the struggles and the, peeling away the layers,
Yes, totally.
learning to be authentic.
Yeah, totally. Totally. It's like working out a whole new muscle,
Hmm.
being on camera and recording your voice. And it's, I mean, before I met you, I didn't even have my face on Instagram. Like
No.
it was like, no, I'm not putting my face on. I didn't have my name on there. I was just so nervous. It's just like, yeah, being on stage and
Well, because people are always going to judge you and then give feedback and then have criticism, and it's uncomfortable. But like,
mhm.
the more I get feedback, the less I actually give a shit. I'm like, I don't give a shit what anyone says. Okay, well, you don't like me because my voice. Yeah, neither do I. It's kind of annoying sometimes. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, I can't
Yeah.
give myself a whole new personality. Like,
Mm.
just being more accepting and soft of the things maybe other people don't like about us. You're doing this thing on the podcast or that. It's like, well, most people like me, and if you don't like me, then I don't. You don't have to be
Yeah,
friends with me.
totally.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's allowing you to be more comfortable with yourself and
Hmm.
like you said, accepting and appreciating yourself for who you are and understanding that not every person that listens to me or watches me is going to like me, and so they'll move on and they'll go someplace else, and that's fine. So, it's just so fascinating to me how this is all sort of come to fruition, because like when you look at the planets for this week, and like where things are transiting and the timing of us making this announcement, we started the podcast when the sun was in Aries, which is, the first sign. And now we're concluding our time together, or announcing the conclusion of it, with during the time of the new moon in Libra, which is the solar eclipse. And so, we'll talk about this more when we get to the day, but it's just like the moon crossing over the sun, and it's like being bathed in the light of the sun, the fire of the sun. It's like baptism by fire. It's like burning up old entanglements, old relationships, and allowing for something new to come in. Which, yeah, what are you
Oh,
gonna
I was
say?
gonna say, so, if it's in Libra, maybe something is coming off one side of the scales, which can be very uncomfortable, but it leaves room. Like, it has to balance out. That's just what
Mm-hmm.
scales do. So it's like you take something off the scale, it's going to be a big transition, but something else will take its place. That energy will
Yes.
be replaced with something new.
Yes, totally, totally. So like just looking at, the first day here on Monday, October 9th, we're talking about Venus, the planet of relationships, Lady Luck, the goddess of love and beauty, opposing Saturn, the god of wealth and time, the planet of restriction, responsibility, hard work, achievement, and authority. So Venus transiting through Virgo, Virgo's the conscious mind. Pisces is where Saturn is. That's the unconscious mind. So Venus and Virgo, this is about, sort of eliminating relationships, or eliminating frequencies within the relationship that is no longer necessarily serving you in the way that you want it to be serving you, or serving you in the past. And then the opposition to Saturn is taking responsibility for your role in the relationship, holding yourself accountable, holding your partner accountable, being able to sit down at the table and say, this is what I want, this is what I'm giving, and you say this is what you want and this is what you're giving, and then you are able to maybe eliminate anything within that dynamic that is no longer in either of your highest goods. So this is feels like a big transitional
Hmm.
week for relationships.
Yeah, I think even just it's really interesting because I feel like the last podcast we really talked about like our communication and moving through issues because we talk about things so much, but in the transition of deciding to move it in another direction, conflict came up just in the decision for that, which was made before there was any conflict.
Mhm.
And it brought up a lot of both of our psychological baggage and maybe some Venus energy that needed to be, picked apart in our relationships that we, even though we think we were always bringing to the table our whole selves and being able to communicate all the time, it's like no matter how much we clean out these closets, there was stuff lingering for both of us that ended up coming up through
Mhm.
this transition, which I thought was so interesting because both of us are always like, okay, yeah, we can always come to the other person with anything and we're going to work it out and it's going to be okay. And somehow in this like scary moment of like, what's going to happen, I feel like a lot of stuff came up for us that
Mhm.
I think ended up really being a good thing, that we got to maybe reflect on ourselves, reflect on each other. And then I think in the end, it really made me appreciate you, and
Mm.
just the reflection of astrology and thinking sometimes that we have it figured out. And the whole self-help world of, it's like, oh, if I do the work then it'll be healed, and it's like, no, we both have things that we're always going to be working on, and some unconscious baggage that we didn't even know was happening, maybe giving too much in certain areas for both of us, and
Mhm.
then wanting to feel more appreciated in certain areas, which I think we both do such a good job of most of the time. So it just felt like
Mhm.
a weird shock.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
it was, to be able to work that out with you, was, it was very emotional and confronting, but
Hmm.
I I think that I don't know who else I could have really moved through that with. Like, it wasn't always graceful, but I think that, it's brought me a lot of compassion because I do care for you so much. And I think that
Mhm.
that's also why it brought up so much for me. It was just like the death of the old way of doing things. Like, I think we were talking about some Pluto energy in our charts, off
Totally.
of here. And it's just terrifying. I feel like we end up just ripping our hair out when it's like, okay, it's time to critique things with the Virgo season on our relationships, go through the psychological baggage. And as long as we're continuously doing that, then it's a little less agitating. But no matter what, the big transitions are hard. They're very
Mhm.
hard.
Mhm. Absolutely. Totally. Man, it has been a journey. Just going through not only the podcast with you, but closing out our time together on the
Hmm.
podcast. And as a Scorpio myself and a North Node in Scorpio, like I have to go through these mergers and then deaths of the energy and rebirth and transformation. It's very difficult, very challenging. And
I'm
yeah,
wondering, as a Scorpio, do you always like, is it kind of always like all or nothing? You just like bond super, super deeply, and then it's like much more of a uprooting when things are.
totally. It's all in, when
Hmm.
I'm bonded with somebody, it's all in 110%. It's like I become a part of them. And so,
Yeah,
if I feel like the other person that I'm bonded to is hurt by me, then I feel hurt, or if the other person that I'm bonded to is hurting me, then I feel like,
I think both of
dying.
those,
And so,
I feel like both of those were happening simultaneously, and it was
yeah,
really intense.
totally.
I feel like, now I'm feeling much lighter, but it was a really intense week for both of us.
Yeah. Well, it's a pressure cooker, going through the Scorpio energy is a pressure cooker, like when you think of like a diamond being formed, it takes intense pressure. When you think of a grape turning into a bottle of wine, it's great pressure. So, this is a transition that had to happen, but it wasn't necessarily easy all the way through, So are you
I
looking
mean,
on to Tuesday?
yeah, I am, which I feel like, it's always so perfect.
Yeah, because there's Pluto, the god of death, the planet of transformation in Capricorn. And, it's there because it's ending its retrograde transit. So Pluto ends its retrograde transit today on October 10th, at the same time that the sun, the planet of light, life, and vitality, transiting through Libra, is opposing Chiron, the wound, and the ancient wisdom that is unlocked through healing that wound, which is transiting through Aries. So this is like facing your insecurities in your close personal relationships. Wow, that comes up.
Mhm.
And then the Pluto energy is transforming your
Mhm.
relationship to authority. to yourself as an authority, taking responsibility
Ooh.
for yourself, holding yourself accountable. And, this has been a long-term transit. I mean, Pluto is literally back where it was on January 7th. So here we are, October 10th, and Pluto's in the same spot that it was on January 7th. What is that, like 10 months ago?
Hmm.
And so Pluto began its retrograde on May 1st, and it moves out of its retrograde transit on January 31st. So it takes over a year for Pluto to actually move like beyond a degree from where the retrograde began. So this is like anyone who has key astrological points or planets in a cardinal sign, an earth, or a water sign between 26, 27, 28, 29 is been hit by this transformation. So I have a planet at 26 in this point, and so there has been this transformation going on for me over this last year.
I mean,
It
I was
ebbs and
thinking,
flows.
I feel like there's always so many pieces to each symbol, and you brought up uh authority,
Mm-hmm.
yourself as an authority. And I wasn't the first thing that I saw when I looked at the transit, which I mean, obviously the authority thing just is so perfect, but I was thinking of, you know, career achievement, like a transition to the way you would be, all the steps you would take to get somewhere in your career, and having a shift in that, because this has been a big career move to build you as an astrologer, and taking a different path to get where you want to go. And I think that, the journey of waiting for the intuition, like waiting for that intuitive hit to be like, okay, something needs to change here, because you are very slow to make moves normally. So I
Mm-hmm.
think this was building for a long time, some need for change. And then, there was an opening where you're like, okay, I know what's going to happen next. Gabriella, I think maybe we've shared about it. She graduated from school. She is, I don't know what the verbiage is for, she's like in an internship, but she takes clients, and now she's like an official, is she official therapist now?
She has her associate license for marriage and family counseling.
So she takes
So
clients.
yes, yes.
So I think that, maybe that also having a little piece to the puzzle, like her career is transitioning. And I think you're both in this. Now you're like, I mean, I feel like you weren't a baby astrologer when you started, but like you didn't have clients all the time. So now you've been like through the podcast, it seems you've gotten pretty popular, and you're able to have clients all the time. So now you're both in this place where you're like really, really in your careers now. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that will be a really cool aspect to have both of you. Like I just saw you guys both the other day, and you with the astrology, and she also knows tons about astrology. So it's really fun to always hear her perspective. And
Mm-hmm.
I just think that, maybe like your timelines on life, and, the path of the podcast plus then the path of her career are kind of like aligning. You're in like a new space that you've been there for about a year,
Yes,
and
yes.
the space is so beautiful. So now you're going to be able to record there together. You've been
Mm-hmm.
upgrading. It just feels like, yeah, the transitions for achievement, maybe for both of you, for your
Totally.
careers and achievement, are kind of like moving up together, I hope.
Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, that's the plan, that's the focus, that's where the energy is. But it's like you said too, like it's not easy for me to make these changes. I love the stability, as two of my three signs in the big three are fixed signs. So I don't like the changes, but
I mean,
Scorpio is that's the weird thing about Scorpio. It's a fixed sign, so it doesn't want to move, but it is the sign of transformation because it's ruled by Pluto, which is the planet of transformation. So like when you think of like a diamond isn't moving when it transforms from the rock to the diamond, a caterpillar isn't moving when it transforms into a butterfly, a grape isn't moving when it transitions into a bottle of wine. It's in the same place, but it's dying the way that it is, and it's being transformed into something new. And so that is something that I've gone throughout life. and it's never really fun when you're going through it, but the alternative is less fun. So,
Yeah, I mean, something like, I mean, even when we're talking about today, it's like Chiron and Aries. It's like
mhm,
the uncomfortable wound you have to your being, your face, your confidence.
yes.
Um, the discomfort of, showing that, which is, in turn like a death of your old self and a rebirth of this new thing. Like that's very scary. It's very scary
Mhm,
for me too. So I think we're kind of
mhm,
both going through that together. But
yes,
also,
totally.
yeah, we can't just stay the same forever because that's
No,
not good either.
no,
It doesn't work
exactly.
either.
Totally. No, I know, and like I think of you and like you're you got all that mutability, and you've been like with me for 3.5 years. It's almost like you've been fighting against your nature to adapt and evolve into, you know, by being so committed to me. So now you're going to have that opportunity to maybe evolve even more, even though you've been evolving and changing and growing through our time together. But ultimately, like with your North Node in Aries, like you have to lead and blaze your
Mhm.
own trail.
I know you always say that. I mean, I think here, I mean, I don't want to go into too long of a tangent, but like through this whole podcast, this specific alignment of the Chiron and Aries, you always are telling me like, oh, like leadership, you have to lead all the stuff, and I'm just, and then also what is the Aquarius energy, the
It's the
community?
community. Yes, the
I'm just like,
community.
oh my God. I'm like, Scott, at the beginning, I'm like, Scott, what do you mean? And now I'm just like, oh my God, this is so crazy. Like, you have really been there for me and held my hand through so many things. So I do feel a lot more. You have built my confidence and my comfortability in being able to manage whatever life brings at me through you and through astrology, of just learning this language that you have taught
Mm,
me. And even just writing the book together was like a game changer. I feel like you really have given me so many tools. Like maybe I don't
mm,
use them on the daily. Sometimes people are like, what's the alignment? What's the alignment? I'm like, I don't, it's just so much change all the time. But like anytime
mhm.
I'm doing something really good is happening or something really bad is happening, then I always look it up. I'm like, okay, what is the take? What are the juicy parts that I can get from this, the lessons, instead of just crying by myself? It's like, okay, let's reflect on why the change is happening. Even just here where it's like, okay, it's scary and new and uncomfortable. Well, like reflecting with you about the new things to come and not staying the same and being okay with the discomfort. I think that's maybe the biggest lesson of all, is to like being okay with the discomfort and knowing that like things, and even just astrology as a whole, it's like it's always, nothing will ever be the same. Nothing will ever always be good. That's
No,
ridiculous.
no, I know. Yeah, exactly.
And like you just always laughing at like how it's always going to be bad again. You're like, haha, it's like you have it figured out. That's not going to last.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to get a new
Exactly.
lesson.
That's why we have to enjoy the good moments,
Hmm.
you know. For sure. Wow. I was gonna say something else, but I don't remember what I was gonna say. So let's move on to the next day, because this is a big transit happening on Wednesday, October 11th. That's Mars, the god of war, the planet of action, aggression, and conflict,
Ooh,
beginning transit in
Scorpio.
Scorpio, the sign that it rules, the fixed water sign symbolized by the scorpion. So Mars
That's you.
returns to it. Yeah, that's me. Returns to its second home, Scorpio. And it is going to be here from October 11th to November 24th. The last time Mars was in Scorpio was October 30th to December 13th, 2021. And the time before that was November 18th to January 3rd, 2020. So think back to those
Ah,
dates for clues on what could be in store for you this time around, especially for those that were born with key astrological points or planets in Leo or Aquarius. There's going to be conflict for you depending on what planet is transiting, or what planet was transiting through those two signs for you when you were born. But, this is bringing that warlike energy, that action movement energy to these karmic bonds. It's literally like, I think of like the tractor that's like toiling up the soil and turning over all the hard soil on top to get down to that rich, really dark soil with
Mm,
the worms, the
yeah,
underworld. Like, you think of Scorpio, it's the underworld. So Mars is digging up
the
the
good stuff.
underworld. Yeah, exactly. So we're, during this period from now, October 11th to November 24th, there could be conflicts that come up in your intimate relationships, your deepest karmic bonds, but not for the purpose of ending a relationship, though it certainly can end the relationship, but something needs to transform. So whatever the conflict that's coming up is bringing something to the surface that you and the one that you're bonded to need to look to and say, okay, what is this that has been beneath the surface of our relationship? What do we need to do to transform this so that our relationship can continue? Or is what comes up maybe too toxic that it doesn't make sense for you to stay bonded to this person? And
Hmm.
that's okay. Not everything is meant to last forever. Like, I feel like we get fixated on this fear that, like, you're going to be my friend forever. We're going to be together forever because, then I don't have to be afraid about being alone.
Hmm.
But the thing is like, you will die, and maybe your partner will die with you at the same time. I don't know. Or maybe most likely they're not. And your
Hmm.
soul's going to go off on its own. But it also has the opportunity to merge back into whatever greater power is there and be a part of everything. But there's this fixation of fear, that of loneliness, of needing to be bonded to somebody forever. And maybe you can have that. But in order for you to have that, you have to constantly be digging up what is going on beneath the surface of the bond to make sure
Hmm.
that the bond is still pure, that there is love here,
Well,
that we are on the same page, that we are working in the same direction.
and that's like, a life and death cycle of its own relationship internally all the time. Otherwise, there will be the bigger breaks.
Mhm. Yes, exactly. Exactly. If you're doing, it's like if you're keeping up with this periodically, then there won't be the bigger breaks,
Hmm.
because these smaller breaks will keep things together.
Almost like a little earth. I don't know if it probably is wrong, but like, like an earthquake or whatever. It's like you can have little pieces or you can have like a big shift. It's like, is it going to move a little bit all the
Hmm.
time or is it going to
Yes,
like crumble?
exactly. Exactly. It's also like just cleaning a house, taking care of a house.
Mm.
If you don't do anything to the house and it just
It's
stays
going to get
vacant,
crazy.
eventually it's going to be condemned, because it's
Mm.
going to rot away. It's going to be filthy. It's not going to be worth going in there and cleaning it because it's rotted away. So this is about keeping things up. That's what this is about. This Pluto or Mars in Scorpio. Thursday, October 12th, the moon, the planet of emotions, transiting through Virgo, opposing Neptune, the god of fresh water and the sea, the planet of illusion, deception, compassion, and intuition in Pisces. Again, like just Monday, we had the Virgo Pisces opposition with Venus and Saturn. And now we have the Virgo Pisces opposition with the moon and Neptune. So this again is kind of the same, similar theme to Monday. It's taking a critical or analytical look at what you're feeling. And maybe if you're feeling critical of yourself or someone else, can you be more empathetic to them? Can you be more compassionate? How can you
Mm.
maybe see things from their perspective, but also how can you be more nurturing to yourself? At the same time, the emotions are coming up in these critical areas because there is some dust here. There is some things that need to
Some
be worked out.
cobwebs.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So what's agitating you on an emotional level?
Yeah, I think that always with, you know, the Virgo nature of the critic with your emotions, it can be very harsh. It is
Hmm.
necessary to always have that critic to refine whatever is happening, but with the compassion of Pisces. So you're not just like poking and scratching and just making everything feel harsh and sharp. It's like doing it with kindness, reflecting on maybe why it's there, how it got there. We can't always prevent these things from happening, some things just get neglected, some things get left behind that we didn't even intend to let go of, or like,
Mm,
things just get dirty and you're like, well, how the hell did that get there? I didn't even know that was there. It was just
totally.
hiding until we moved the chair, and then we're like, shit,
Oh my God.
there's a bunch of stuff
Yes.
stuck back
Or like
there.
when the sun comes in from a certain direction and you realize that I thought I dusted over there. It's a mess. But that's what kind of like that Virgo energy does opposing Pisces, is it's helping you see the things beneath the surface
Mm.
that maybe you'd missed, that you need to
Mhm,
pay attention to.
mhm.
Yes. More Pisces here on Friday, October 13th. Friday the 13th. Oh my God.
Oh
Friday the
shit.
13th.
In October, guys.
In October, Friday the 13th. And it's Mars in Scorpio, the sign that it rules. I mean, Scorpio is the Halloween sign,
Yeah, yeah, it
and
is.
so it's the sign of death. And, I think of the day of death, Dias de los Muertos. And then it's forming the trine with Saturn in Pisces. So, I mean, we're getting into some dark areas here. Like we're taking maybe an aggressive look at what's going on within our unconscious and how our unconscious has affected our karmic relationships, our deepest, most intimate bonds. When you see what has been going on within your unconscious and how your unconscious has been affecting your deepest, most karmic bonds, do you have the courage to hold yourself accountable for what has been going on beneath the surface? And in doing so, does your partner, the one you're bonded to, also have the courage to look within themselves and say, yes, this is where I have been maybe beating myself up too much or beating you up too much in my mind,
Mhm.
and so it's seeped into our relationship here. Could be some tense, some dark energy that's happening here, but it's a water connection. So it's a
It's
trine, it's
healing.
positive, it's healing, but we have to be willing to step into these dark areas.
I mean, everything we're talking about, I feel like is right now feels like it's about us.
Yes,
It,
exactly,
it's
right.
been such an intense week, and I felt everything that you just said is so on point to just be able to take responsibility for myself and the way that I
Mm-hmm.
viewed things, and also like the compassion and the subconscious stuff that maybe got left behind, and
Mm-hmm.
taking action, and just it does also feel very healing. Like some
Yes,
stuff that needed to be worked out has been worked out, and it feels so much more like just soothed all of these
mm-hmm.
things that might have been hiding, that didn't even really know they were there until this shakeup happened.
Totally.
And in the moment, it just literally felt like so awful. And then now, just looking at this alignment today, you're like, oh, yeah, it really, like, there can be these moments of feeling like everything is for a purpose, like taking action in this with this Scorpio energy and healing our subconscious patterns, and
Mm-hmm.
with compassion for ourselves and our deep karmic bonds.
Yes. Yes. I love it. And it gets even better too. Because
Some juicy stuff
when we look
happening.
at Saturday, October 14th, it's the new moon in Libra, the solar
Ah,
eclipse.
ah,
Solar eclipse in Libra.
some new
So,
energy here.
yes, Libra is the sign of relationships. And the new moon, which this new moon is a solar eclipse. So it's literally like when you think of, if you're in one of these places on planet Earth where you're able to see the moon cross over the sun and black out the sun, it's like the emotions are being bathed, or they're being baptized in fire. So all those icky emotions and feelings that you may have had about whatever relationship from the past, or maybe it's a present relationship that's going through a transformation that's challenging or difficult, it's about burning up those emotions and releasing them so that you can have this new soil that's fertile and fresh to grow something new. It's like I grew up in Central California, and it's like the breadbasket of the world. And there's
So
just
what does the breadbasket mean?
there's
For
so
making
much.
bread, literally?
Well, no, they say that because, all the food that comes from the
Oh, okay,
San
okay,
Joaquin Valley,
okay.
like there's literally just millions
Farms.
upon millions of square miles of like orchards and fields of farming all kinds of stuff. And, there's a time of the season where, for whatever reason, they will tear down all the trees and burn the trees,
Oh.
and then plant new trees. And
Mm-hmm.
this is kind of what the solar eclipse is about. It's about burning up whatever is rotted away. Like maybe some of the
Mm.
trees have gotten some kind of disease and they can't be saved, so they need to burn them up and refresh the soil so they can burn something new that doesn't have the disease. So this is an opportunity for cleansing your relationship energy and moving forward and starting something new in a way that's more enlightened than where you were, say, a year ago with the last new moon
Um,
in Libra.
I was also thinking, wait, so what is the eclipse again? It's the sun and then the moon and then the earth in a row.
Yes,
So
exactly.
I
So,
was,
like the solar eclipse is when the moon crosses between the sun and the earth.
mhm.
So, the moon crosses between the sun and the earth. So, it literally
So we,
goes in front of the sun and blacks out the sun. The lunar eclipse is when that's during the full moon. So that'll be the next full moon, which is the full moon in Taurus, which is after this new moon. And that is when the earth will cross between the path of the moon and the sun. So the moon is full because it's fully reflecting the light of the sun. But when the earth crosses between the the sun and the moon, the full moon goes dark
mhm.
because the earth is blacking it out. It's blacking out the rays of the sun that are hitting the moon. So that's the lunar eclipse. This one is the solar eclipse, which happens during the new moon. So what were you going to say?
So I was thinking that although you can't see the sun at that moment, this is like you're supposed to be planting the seeds and you're fully in the dark. So maybe it's like even more powerful because usually you're planting seeds during the new moon when you can't see it. But wait, so if there's a new moon, you can't see it. So how is there a eclipse happening? We just can't see the eclipse. Am I losing my mind?
So during every new moon, the 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 moon is crossing in between the sun and the earth, but not necessarily.
We won't see it shining on it.
There's two times of the year where you can actually see, and it's not from everywhere on earth,
Hmm.
but you can actually see the moon cross over the sun. Every
Hmm.
other new moon, the moon is still crossing the path of the sun, but it's not
And
crossing
there's,
from a direction that we can see it crossing over.
I
Like
see.
the sun is up here and the moon is down there. And so it's not blocking the sun from our perspective. If we were, you know, out in space, maybe we'd be able to see it. But a lot of people say like not to plant seeds or manifest things uh, during the solar eclipse because
Oh,
it's blacking out the energy of the sun. It's maybe more of a cleansing because the moon is being burned up by the sun, so it's
okay.
cleansing that energy.
Okay.
But it can also be very powerful. It can be a very powerful time to manifest what it is you want. So I leave it up to every individual, whatever feels right to you energetically.
Yeah.
And it's always about understanding like what is going on in your chart. If you have planets that are aligning in your chart with the solar eclipse, then that could mean something very powerful for you, some that you're meant to manifest something powerful. If you feel like it's too witchy and too dark to manifest during that period, then don't. But if you want to play with the magic, then go for it. It's to each their own. I don't think that there's a right way or a wrong way for any individual. It all depends on the individual. It's not like a one size fits all one size fits all jumpsuit, like a hard
Hmm.
and fast rule. So the energy around this is cleansing and rebirthing of relationship energies. And whatever you decide to do with that, whether it's something or nothing, is up to you.
I mean, it's still, you're gonna, even just knowing about it, it's like you're automatically, if you're following along, you're going to reflect on your relationships, and whether or not you make a change is up to you. But
Exactly.
just the idea of reflecting and taking stock of what's happening to them, I think is an important, um, just to have that be in your fields.
I agree 100%. Yes, it feels very powerful and very supportive to me and to us, to you and I, Ingrid. So,
Mhm.
uh, moving on to Sunday, October 15th, this is like a different sort of eclipse happening. It's like the moon eclipsing Mars. It's where the moon moves into Scorpio and crosses the path of Mars. So it's like even deeper, even more powerful, even more magical or witchy, or whatever word you want to use to describe it here. Pluto or Scorpio is the sign of magic and the psychic realm and the sixth sense. And so the moon transiting in here, it's almost like cleaning up whatever wasn't already cleansed during the new moon. It's cleaning up all. It's like when you're scrubbing the pan, but you need like that metal scrubber to really get in there. That's kind of, I feel like, what this is doing, because when the moon moves into Scorpio, it's the sign of secrets. It's going to bring up whatever emotions you're feeling that are maybe beneath the
So we're
surface that
hiding.
you've been hiding or you've been hiding from. And with
Uh-huh.
Mars, there is like that jackhammer that's waking you
Mhm.
up and saying, you got to pay
There's some
attention to
shit
this.
here.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's going to get into like the dirty, dark areas that still need to be cleansed, that maybe weren't cleansed during the new moon during the solar eclipse. So like very
Jeez.
powerful transformative energy happening this week. However you choose to use it wisely, use it with love for yourself and for those that you're bonded to, those that you're in relationship with. It's really about respecting every single soul, including your own, and making sure that your soul is being respected, but also respecting the souls that you come into contact with, and know that we're all here together, but we all have our own journeys, and nobody is beholden to anyone else unless both sides agree to be beholden to each other in some way. But at any time, those sort of commitments can be broken and moved on because it's not working for one or both parties. And we have to respect each other for that. So I respect you, Ingrid. I love you. I'm very grateful for you. And yeah, do you have anything to add?
I mean, the same. I'm very grateful for all the time we've spent together
Mm-hmm.
and just holding my hand along this whole journey and teaching me so much about myself and about yourself and about astrology, communication, relationships. Like these things you've taught me go into all aspects of my life. So
Mm.
I am excited. I am sad for just our next, I think we're going to do two more podcasts.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we got to, I feel like even just this week has been crazy. I'm, here, obviously I'm not at home if you're watching. Uh, and then even if you're not watching, Scott will still be here. I'll be here for the next few weeks, but, go follow on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, write reviews, go buy the book. All the astrology stuff will still be here for everybody. But yeah, if you're, I'm at my parents' house and I just came from the hospital, and there's just so many things happening in so many of my friendships and intimate relationships. Everything feels like it's shifting, and it's been like so uncomfortable, but also I'm like going through the waves of being like, oh my gosh, this is so scary. And then being like, okay, that means there is like a rebirth,
Mm-hmm.
and, here helping my family. And hopefully that is also kind of a cleansing and rebirth for, my dad's getting a heart procedure done, I think, tomorrow. And just feel like emotions have been very intense lately, but
Mm-hmm.
I am feeling at this moment, in this one present moment, I'm feeling grateful and appreciative of all the lessons I've learned And yeah, I'm excited to see you next week and continue our conversation and hopefully have more in the future about whatever this big transition is for us both.
Absolutely. Awesome, Ingrid.
And if
That-
you need some hand holding from Scott, go to theweeklytransit.com. He's still doing all of his readings, he's still doing
oh,
all of
yeah.
his classes. So
Yep.
go find him. He'll have more time to hold your hand instead of mine.
Hmm.
And, if you've been following along with the podcast, this is kind of a mini version of what he gives to you when you're going through stuff. I always bring my personal stuff here, and Scott kind of guides me along with the planets and stars, his translation of how to use that energy to move through things more gracefully.
Hmm.
So if it's been on your mind, go hang out with Scott. Some one-on-one time is always very nurturing.
Thank you, Ingrid.
Yeah, you're welcome. I will see you next week.
I'll see you next week.